Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Somewhere between science and superstition.
We have such sights to show you.
Strange Eons. Welcome to Strange Eons Radio. That's Eric Morgott over there.
Hello.
I'm Kelly Young. No Vanessa this time. Sorry, guys. But in her place, we have the amazing Tony K joining us once again.
Woohoo!
Hi, Tony.
Yay. I am delighted to be here, except my delight is somewhat tempered with regret that Vanessa is not here for me to bandy with. So, hi, Vanessa. Sorry you're not here. Damn you.
Yeah, well, you guys are going to have to do your own
Now
podcast.
it's the middle-aged white guy show again, man. Oh, how are you?
Crap.
Everybody's great here. And just to let the listeners know, there will be an attempt to Skype with Vanessa, and we will put her pick for the Pirates in this episode, if it all goes well.
Yep.
This topic today is pirates in, I guess, horror-ish.
Yeah, I think we all managed to find something that fits into that area.
Right, at least
Absolutely.
genre. We had ruled out Pirates of the Caribbean, which we probably didn't have to because there's an awful lot of fantasy and horror
Yeah.
in those things. So
Oh, yes.
ghosts and shit like that. But
Especially
let's
some of
face
the
it.
later ones where they had the Cthulhu-looking...
Yeah. Let's face it. Everybody has seen those movies, though.
Right.
Who gets to jump in on this topic first?
Well, first, what we like to do is just a real quick roundup of something we might have seen lately that we want to talk about. And
right.
I'll start it out if you guys don't mind.
I do.
Oh.
I do it anyways.
Okay. Did anybody else watch VFW?
No,
yet.
I haven't seen it yet, and I am chomping at the bit.
It is so much fun. It's on Prime for rental.
Okay.
So it's not streaming for free or anything like that. But let me tell you guys, if you dig stuff like Assault on Precinct 13, I mean, this is by the same director of Bliss, which you just watched and loved.
Oh, yeah.
And he did another film that I liked, and now I can't quite remember what it was. But it's super gory. It's about a group of old vets at a VFW hall that is suddenly under siege by these kind of drug-crazed mutants almost. And it's got Stephen Lang and Fred Williamson and
It's always
Bill
weird.
Sadler's in it.
yeah. It's just a who's who of old 80s film guys.
It's always weird to hear Stephen Lang said, because our buddy
right.
Steve Lang,
Right.
Oh, God, I know.
who is a SAG-level actor.
Right. It doesn't have that Stephen Lang in it.
Damn.
It's got
Too
the
bad.
Stephen Lang that you remember from Avatar and
Yeah.
all those other
He's
movies.
done some
Some big
And
stuff.
Breathe,
He is by any means, by any standards, he is definitely the hero of this film. So it's just a blast. It's a violent, gory blast. I know a lot of people are kind of iffy on whether they want to see it because it's a Fangoria film, and traditionally those
fair.
historically
That's
they have
not
not
the
been.
quality.
Yeah. This movie is by far the best of that Fangoria stuff, and it's actually a really good, fun movie. I know that Craig Mullins, who is a friend and listener,
Yeah.
actually got to see it in the theater,
Oh,
and he
geez.
came out and said that the place just went apeshit for the movie. So
I don't doubt it.
yeah. So if you get a chance, check out VFW. What about you, Eric? What'd you
I
see?
have one that I know. I know we've talked about, but I don't remember if we talked about it on the show even. But the Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was less than a successful crossover on
Yeah.
TV. I don't know if this enters your realm at all, Tony, with the Warner Brothers, or not Warner Brothers, but it's CW, now.
CW.
Superhero TV shows like The Flash and stuff like that. Well, what they did at the end is they're all on the same Earth now. They used to be on separate
Right,
Earths, so now
right.
they're all in the same Earth, and they're all interacting. And it's like the writers all went and said, "We need a touch of what Legends is doing."
Oh, they got kind of funny.
Yeah. So since that, as kind of mediocre as that Crisis was, since then, it's actually been a lot of fun. They've been much more entertaining, and Arrow is gone. So
Right.
that's actually nice because
Getting a little long in the tooth.
Yeah, it needed to be done. But so I got to say that the Flash has been more entertaining. The Supergirl is pretty good, but it was doing all right before. And well, DC Legends continues to be just the best show, probably on CW.
I have to admit, I kind of forgot about those, and I haven't watched anything since since that very disappointing Crisis on Infinite
Well, before
Earths.
either, so you're kind of off of them anyway.
That's true.
So
That's true.
you'd already weaned yourself off.
Too
of
little,
them.
too late, CW.
But what makes DC Legends of Tomorrow so much fun is it's a group of time traveling, real secondary characters from DC, except for Constantine. Adding Constantine in for it really boosted it, adding magic and weirdness, and it's takes itself with absolutely no seriousness. It is a true fun romp of weirdness. Like the last episode was they have to stop a serial killer. And instead of it being a dark, creepy serial killer, it's actually like a slasher 80 movie. And they have to time travel into a late 80s prom and stop this guy from killing. It's great. It's just fun. So it's nice to have everybody's all, like the Joker and all that. It's got to be gritty and dark. It's like, well, we've done that actually really well. I don't know how much grittier or darker you're going to want to get after the Joker, but I'm sure someone will try. But it's nice to have just a fun, goofy comic book thing that's good to watch.
Cool.
It's nice, wholesome family fun.
Oh, boy.
I don't watch a lot of that.
I'm out. If it's not tawdry and horrific, I don't want to see it. Yeah. So, gee, what have I seen most recently? I finally, at long last, got to catch Color Out of Space.
Oh, good.
So
Another Color Out of Space episode we had here.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Never talked about that.
I'm sure. But yeah, I was really pleased with it. I mean, it definitely. Stanley's 3 for 3 as far as I'm concerned directorially.
Yeah.
I love both of his other two previous features. I didn't see the anthology that he contributed to, but yeah, I mean, I visually stunning. It is. I actually really enjoy the acting. Some of the character development stuff is a little bit wobbly, but we're not there for the character stuff. Yeah, and I was stunned visually. It's a wonderful combination of practical and CGI, and it looks like you picture this world in the original Lovecraft novella. It looks like that beautifully, and I actually think there's plausible full cage rage that like builds in the movie. It starts at a logical place, which is kind of an interesting and unusual thing.
Yeah.
It's not just pure balls to the wall cage rage for cage rage's sake. Not that we're complaining about that, but there's actually some context there. I think, is it Jolie Richardson?
Yes.
I think she's kind of the secret weapon in the movie. There's a lot of
Boy,
pathos
no kidding.
in her performance, especially and non-spoilery towards the end.
Yeah.
She kind of pulls the heartstrings a little. Yeah. No complaints. Really enjoyed it solidly, and I would imagine I do need to take advantage of my legal right as a Washingtonian and see it in an altered state at some point. But, it sure felt like I was. So, thumbs up.
Interesting. That is a divisive film because you go on to the Facebook groups, the Lovecraft Facebook groups, which are kind of a trash fire anyway.
Yeah.
But you've got people who really love that movie and really just hate it.
I've run into less of the hate group ones than I did after Mandy. So I remember Mandy was all positive, and then suddenly it's like everybody's shitstormed on that one really bad. It's like,
Really?
I know there's been some. I was expecting more.
Yeah.
I liked Color Out of Space enough, and I thought it was weird enough that I was expecting a lot of. Once it went wide, I was expecting it to be 70% nasty, but
Right.
it was still pretty positive, and all the people whose opinions I at least am interested in have liked it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And you say full cage rage, and I'm wondering why nobody has used that as a tagline for a Nicolas Cage movie yet.
That's a good question. The cage rage phrase came from my buddies over at City of Geek. I think it was Kim on City of Geek came up with the label cage rage or coined it from somewhere. That was first I heard it.
Yeah, please tell us about a different podcast. Tony.
Oh, yes, I should.
Edit all of this out, Eric.
That's it. Oh, come on. Everyone plugs their stuff on
That's
a
right.
podcast.
That's the
Coming soon. I also do a podcast with three lovely folks, Cody Masco, Kim Douthit, and Bob Foster called cityofgeek.com, where we ramble on and meander about whatever topic strikes our fancy. So that's where Cage Rage came from.
Nice. Cool. Well, and a big thanks to Bob Foster, who is always sharing the post for Strange Eons Radio. So thanks, Bob.
Yeah, I've still got a 5-star video of Here's Waiting. Oh, let me explain why I won't be watching that anytime soon. Before we get into our regular stuff, one more thing. I figured out the other day with the Crypticon Film Festival, which we frequently speak on here, that I've got about 14 days before we hit final deadline. Luckily, not notification date, so I've got some wiggle room, but 14 days and 50 some odd movies to watch.
Man.
So,
Let me do some quick math here.
yeah, so
That's 43
busy
movies
man.
a day, which is
some are
doable.
shorts.
Oh,
Some are
okay.
shorts.
All right. Yeah, I think you can do this.
oh yeah. And I got to tell you, man, I started watching it, and out of the first 5 features I watched, 3 were really goddamn good.
Uh-oh.
Like, oh shit. Anyways. So
Do you make the filmmakers battle it out in a final battle to see who gets to actually have their film shown?
that might be interesting. I might consider that, yes.
That will be available for our Patreons when we get that kick.
That's right.
Anyway, you guys, so yeah, we'll be going probably a little long with this because we'll also have Vanessa talking about her film. So why don't we take a quick break? We'll be right back and we'll jump into Pirates.
Climb aboard our haunted house and we'll set off to sea. Scary sights are your reward if you ship out with me. Walk the plank and we'll set sail.
You love the view inside our jail.
A deedly-di-dee-dee. Let's go in the treasure cave. The sea witch will be home. To steal her gold, you must be bold. Her soup's made out of bones.
You think you're brave?
Your teeth be clacking when you meet the deadly kraken. A deedly-di-dee-do. Are you ready for the pirate's revenge at the Children's Museum's haunted house? You better be, because it's open now.
A diddly-di-dee-dow.
And we're back. Hey, normally we would have Vanessa start this out because this was her pick, but because she is not here, we will have Tony, who is sitting in for her, start it out. So, Tony, you picked something for the topic Pirates.
I did indeed. Do we want to talk about runners-up first, or do we wait until the end normally to do that?
Yeah, we normally wait until the end for that. So
Well, in that case, I will dive right in. It was an interesting thing trying to find something for this topic because there were a few things, again, I'll talk more about later, that I almost ended up opting for. But in the end, I picked out a 2014 horror opus called Zombie Pirates.
Do you remember Captain Lazard?
Privateer?
Buccaneer. He was one of the last of the great pirates. Let me put it in terms you might understand. This is a get-rich-quick scheme. Once you start the ritual, you must see it through all the way to the end. 5 bodies, 5 consecutive nights, the bodies marked for Lazard. And in return, a payment of plundered Spanish coin.
I do not know this one at all. I'm not familiar.
I saw the picture of this and watched the trailer and said, not for me.
And well, I won't go all spoilery on my assessment of the movie until I get into what the movie's about. A little bit of history. First of all, I could not find any box office numbers. I could not find any budget numbers. I would imagine, if you pull out decent-sized receipt from your last stop at Safeway or Trader Joe's, that probably would be an equivalent number. That is how super-duper, ultra-mega, uber cheap this is. It's obviously shot on video. It is directed by a gentleman named Steve Sessions, who is apparently in league with Fred Olin Ray.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know this name.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I knew the
And the movie co-stars Sarah French, who's kind of one of Fred Olin Ray's sort of scream queen, part of that posse, and an actor named J.C. Pennylegion, who looks
Wow.
looks suspiciously like Fred Olen Ray with a Colonel Sanders goatee and slick back white hair. So the thing that got me all happy is that actually the poster art, I think, is very strongly reminiscent of the Blind Dead movies,
Okay.
which is Armando de Osorio's Spanish horror films, a whole
I
series
may
of them.
have him say that name when I get to my pick.
Armando de Osorio. And the art on the video box or poster or whatever looks a lot like one of those Blind Dead movie posters.
In fact, when I was doing some research, I saw that and I was like, is this a Blind Dead movie I haven't seen, or is this a new Blind Dead movie?
I did a double
wild.
take, It in its little wet fart heart, it would like to be. Let's put it that way. So this is the setup. Sarah French plays this, what's described on IMDb as dangerous young woman. I would put her in the category of a career criminal who ends up offing this dude. And it turns out that this dude that she's offed in this ancient book that she's stolen is instructions on how to summon up the dead and reap an obscene amount of fortune in the form of Spanish gold coins that are being hoarded by these zombies. The issue is, as explained to her by J.C. Penney Legion, is that she needs to, over the course of 5 consecutive days, kill 5 consecutive people and dump them into the water 5 consecutive times so that zombies can consecutively devour them.
That name
But they're
sounds
dead.
like J.C. Penney calls their employees.
Yes, that
So
could
it's the
be it.
J.C. Penney Legions out to help you with your perfume needs.
You really,
Thank you.
really, truly need a rim shot, like a preloaded rim shot that we can just hit the button and go because we're all 3 on fire this morning, gentlemen. That's the basic setup, and of course she is pursued by a cop who is sort of Faye Columbo style, and one more thing. Type, of course, pretends to be totally clueless except when he's not. The thing that kept coming to my mind as I watched it was padding. It is a very padded movie. If it was a piece of furniture, it would be nothing but fluff and padding and not really have any form. So, yeah, Sessions directs like it's like he's on tranquilizers, and the performances are what you would expect for a shot-on-video movie. The costumes are very nice Spirit Halloween costumes, right down to the masks, which is a little bit of a bummer. And the other thing is, most of the time the zombies are like eating people who've already been bumped off in not particularly gruesome ways. So you get footage of guys in Halloween masks pretending to chomp on a body that's wrapped in a sheet floating in water for like 30 seconds, and then they disappear, and it's like, whatever.
Does the zombie bite transfer zombiness to somebody?
It doesn't even get that sophisticated.
Oh, okay.
Like there's literally once you get towards the climax, there's some actual running away from the zombies, and they end up feasting on one guy who's almost dead as opposed to completely dead.
Mostly dead.
Yes, he's mostly dead because he's taken a cutlass to the gut and is hemorrhaging outward. I really honestly I would much prefer to talk about my runners-up in this movie. It's just, I'll give it the old college try because credit, because I think it comes up with a setup that, had there been a budget worth a damn, and had there been, a sense of pacing worth a damn, it's a kind of idea that would have made a pretty interesting, it's a Tales from the Crypt setup, basically. It's an easy comic setup, only done really poorly and with a lot of padding.
I want you to get into your runners-up, but I'm afraid one of them might be somebody else's
Yeah,
pick.
Oh, that's okay. I will. I think I know. I have a suspicion.
we can run back to them after we do ours.
Yes. So
back to
shall I go through my runners-up with spoiler aversion? Who
Sure,
else?
let's give
Yeah,
it.
might as well.
Give it a couple of minutes. Yeah.
I'm like throwing you guys off totally. Am I? Oh, okay. Yeah. So some of my runners up include The Ice Pirates, Stuart Raffles, 1984
I was considering that one.
action
I did
movie,
as well.
which is junky as hell but fun. I found out some very interesting, strange bedfellow stuff about Stuart Raffle when I was actually researching this that I thought was much more interesting than that movie was, which is that the guy directed Tammy and the T-Rex.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
And he wrote and directed the Philadelphia Experiment, which is actually not
Whoa,
too bad.
jeez.
And there's a pretty cool action movie called High Risk from 1981 that he actually directed. So The Ice Pirates boasts Angelica Houston's first significant role in a movie.
Yeah, she is so good in that movie. She doesn't realize what movie she's in.
Yeah, exactly. And it also co-stars, of course, Robert Urich and Michael D. Roberts, a.k.a. Rooster the Pimp from Beretta. The other runners-up I actually came up with, which I really wish I would have gotten around to and would have been much more worthy of discussion, are a couple of the Hammer pirate movies, actually, from the early 60s. Are you familiar with these?
Not at all.
Yeah, there were two of them at least. The first one was 1962. It's called Pirates of Blood River. And the second one was done in 64 called Devil Ship Pirates. They're pretty darn good. They are solid B-plus action movies. And I've seen the first one, Pirates of Blood River. It's been many, many, many years. But it's a really a pretty damn well done action film. They get away with being able to tighten the budget and not have it take place on a ship by having basically a bunch of evil pirates come into a French Huguenot settlement and start like raising hell. So it all stays like land-bound. It stars Christopher Lee with an eye patch, looking badass as hell, and as coolly evil as you want him to be. Kerwin Matthews, Sinbad from the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, is the male lead, and in amongst a very familiar British character actor cast of people like Andrew Keir and Michael Ripper, you also get a very early turn from Oliver Reed as a French pirate named Locaine. And spoiler alert. Can I go spoiler on a 50-some-year-old movie?
So.
Yeah, okay, good. Because, A, Oliver Reed's awesome in it, and he does a wonderful scenery-chewing turn as a supporting pirate. And when he gets into a knife fight and he ends up getting knifed and he's breathing his last line is, Maman! And then he dies.
Jesus.
There are a few like character actor joys in life that are more profound than hearing Oliver Reed grunt out "Mama" in French as he's dying. So that's my Oliver Reed impersonation. Mama.
Well done. Well, it's
Hey,
like
Eric.
when we did the Hammer film.
I was just going to say, in my research, I came across the movie that you had already done for Hammer, and then I was thinking for our. I can't remember why it was, but you had brought up The Island, and I was like, God,
right. That
Eric's
was
gone
Kindred
through all
Torah.
of his pirates.
I was so when you offered the that was like my first reflex action is I've never seen The Island. Maybe they did that last time.
Did that in the Kinder Trauma.
Yes,
the
exactly.
The Island
Yeah.
and Captain Clegg or Night Creatures was the Hammer one that we talked about.
Yeah,
Way
which is an
back in
entertaining
December.
movie as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was good. I like that one.
So there's them's my runners up in the rather limited pirate genre deal.
To follow up on that, I got to say, we thought the pizza one was going to be tough. Pizza one was friggin' easy, man. This was a hard.
It really was because there are staples that you go to.
Well, and we also kind of said we wanted to keep it genre.
Right.
And-
if we'd gone Captain Blood is okay
Right,
and stuff.
right. There are a ton of pirate
lot
movies.
Yeah,
of
God.
great.
Yeah, if you want to
action.
talk about non-genre pirate movies, geez, The Black Swan.
Yeah.
Captain Blood. God, ooh,
Many.
Well-
so many good ones.
I'll go next then. I chose a relatively recent movie, and it is Deep Rising from 1998.
At a depth of 4,000 feet, they roam harmlessly, minuscule, and unseen by human eyes. At 20,000 feet, they've been known to eat full-grown sharks. But what if those at 40,000 feet were to rise from the deep?
I got a really bad feeling about this.
Deep Rising.
Do you guys remember Deep Rising? Treat Williams?
I do.
Yes.
Okay. It was written and directed by Stephen Sommers, who wrote and directed The Mummy and The Mummy Returns from the 90s.
And Van Helsing.
And Van Helsing. Also G.I. Joe, Rise of Cobra, which is actually pretty good because it has The Rock in it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that the one? Did we see that one in the theater?
Well, I did.
I thought we went to one G.I. Joe movie together in the theater
Oh,
once. I
that's
think it
right.
was
Yes,
that
we
one.
did.
Yeah.
We like skipped work or something to see it.
The Rock is kind of like sriracha sauce. He makes anything work okay.
Absolutely.
Yes.
If you dump sriracha sauce on anything, it's consumable.
Yeah, it had
That is my
a.
assessment.
This movie had a budget of $45 million and a box office of $11 million.
Whoa.
Treat Williams said this came out 4 weeks after Titanic, and his response was, "Look, you see one ocean liner sink, you've seen them all sink." Rotten Tomatoes, the critics gave it 29%. The audience gives it 43%, which is a little surprising to me because I thought this was kind of a beloved film, but maybe not, and maybe it just hasn't been seen well enough. It's kind of a Poseidon Adventure meets Die Hard meets Alien kind of movie. It stars Treat Williams, who has 126 credits. If you don't know Treat Williams, he was kind of a poor man's Harrison Ford, and he really should have been bigger, but he chose some really bad movies to be in, like Dead Heat or 1941. He was in the Substitute sequel movies, 2 and 3. He was also in Once Upon a Time in America, which is a pretty great movie. It also stars Famke Janssen, who plays Jean Grey in all the X-Men movies. She was in House on Haunted Hill, GoldenEye, Lord of Illusions, and a ton of other movies. And then it's just filled with a ton of character actors that I'm not going to get into, but everyone who pops up on screen, you're like, oh, that guy. So this is kind of, it's a group of modern day pirates, and they are boarding a luxury liner. They've taken this groovy little combat ship and pulled up next to this luxury liner in the South Pacific Ocean, and they've got plans to loot it and its passengers. And then when they get on board, they find that the boat is completely empty. And there's no passengers. There's nothing. They can't figure out what's going on. It's one of those kind of ghost story settings where it's clear that there were a lot of people on this boat, and there's food set out on tables. There's all of this stuff, but there is nothing to be seen. In true pirate fashion, they say, fuck it, let's just get the money and get out of here.
Yeah, sure.
And that's when the shit hits the fan. So they do actually end up finding the captain of the ship and a beautiful con woman in the form of Famke Janssen. And they quickly unravel the mystery, which is there are these tentacled creatures all over this boat, and they're gigantic, and they're like taking up entire hallways and all of this stuff. And it just turns into this big thing of we got to get off the boat, and every exit is closed to us. There's double crossing going on between the pirates. But what did you expect, you guys?
Sure.
Fucking pirates.
They're pirates.
And I don't think this is too much of a spoiler, but it becomes pretty clear early on that they are not dealing with a bunch of monsters. They are dealing with one massive monster, and all of its tentacles are reaching throughout the ship.
If it had been made today, what creature do you think they would have referenced?
I think that they were. I think that they were pretty clear in what they were trying to do anyway.
Okay.
So, I mean, when I saw it in '98, I was like, "This is clearly got to be Cthulhu, right?"
You'd think.
And then it's just the pirates trying to get off the boat. Without getting too spoilery, if you've seen this film, you know that there is a reference to King Kong at the end, and it's kind of a throwaway reference, but it was not supposed to be. It was actually supposed to lead into a King Kong remake.
Whoa.
That Stephen Sommers was helming. And when the money fell apart for that, that's when it fell into Peter Jackson's hands, and he started his big, long quest to turn King Kong back into a film. A couple of things about this movie. I fucking love this movie. This is a movie that I do not get tired of watching. Treat Williams is a really good leading man. He's got that jaw that won't quit. He's got a really good slide delivery. He's super handsome. He just never got the chance to really show off, what he was.
That's true. And I think one of the other things that sort of killed his career is, in addition to bad film choices as it progressed, his earliest movies were super critically acclaimed but did poorly.
Yes.
The theatrical version of Hair that he starred in was not a hit. Prince of the City, which he is terrific in. It's one of Sidney Lumet's best crime films. It's sort of an inverse of Serpico. It's an awesome movie, and he's phenomenal in it. And it got Oscar nominations, but it sank like a stone in theaters. So, just dude couldn't catch a break, and that's too bad because he's terrific.
He really is, and he was supposed to be kind of the Harrison Ford model.
Absolutely.
So you may not be surprised to find out that Harrison Ford was originally cast as the lead in this film. And when he backed out, their budget dropped dramatically.
Yeah, probably.
and they ended up going with Harrison Ford Light. The best thing, though, is that Treat Williams, when he's asked about this, he says this was his favorite movie to make.
Oh, really?
He just had an absolute blast with this movie.
It looks like it.
Famke Janssen is, oh my God, beautiful in this movie. She complained about it when she got on the first day that she wanted to play it as a average, ordinary person, and she did not want to be made up and all this. And Stephen Summers says, "You were hired because you're beautiful." So we're not going to let the most beautiful woman in the world play an average-looking person in this film. But she was not first cast either. And in fact, Claire Filani, who was originally cast, filmed several scenes, several days, and she clashed hard with Stephen Summers, who by all accounts is one of the nicest directors anyone has ever worked with. Everybody says they love him. So that tells me something about Claire Filani. I've never liked her. I don't think she's a good actress.
The name's not hitting me.
I'm recognizing the name. I could not pick her out of a police lineup to save my life.
I bet you if a picture popped up, though, you'd go, I've seen her in a bunch of movies, and she just never does much for me.
Yeah.
Here's something that I thought that Eric might enjoy. The opening segment has 400 extras in it as all passengers on this luxury liner. It starts off with this, my favorite Brian Setzer song, Lady Luck, is playing. It's the Brian Setzer Orchestra. It's from his first album, the best album. And you see all these people gambling from all different nationalities. There's all this different currency on the table and all that. So it's a big, massive scene, 400 extras.
That's crazy, man.
The assistant director shot all of that. And then at the end of it all, he introduced Stephen Summers to all of them. And they were all a bit confused because why didn't he direct them? Because if Summers had directed them, they would have had to pay those extra SAG.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
And so he got away with having such a huge set by not having to pay them that much. And I thought that was interesting that, by having the assistant director shoot it, it was, interesting.
Wow.
You work the system, I guess, if you have to. Lose that Harrison Ford movie.
Yeah. I love this movie. I know that Craig Mullins is going to be psyched that I picked this. So hi, Craig. This one's for you.
Yay.
And that was my pick. I wasn't sure where to go with this topic. And when I thought about it, and I try to be a little clever with my picks.
Sure.
And I was like, I'm going to go for some kind of modern day pirates. And I think I did it.
Yeah. No, that fits.
Cool.
I went a very, very different direction in my pick. You mentioned The Blind Dead earlier. Well, I went to, see the third in the series, I believe it is, called The Ghost Galleon.
Ghost Galleon. Maria Persci, Jack Taylor, Barbara Ray, Carlos Lemos, Manuel de Blas, Blanca Estrada in Ghost Galleon.
You want me to do it? I told you I'm scared.
5 human beings with selfish passions find themselves aboard a ship sailing through a night without end.
Would you? You said you would. Oh, come on now, cut it out. And I could learn to do all the important things like fixing my hair. And I could learn to be just like you.
It seemed like a nightmare, but death which came to them one by one forced them to accept the horrible reality.
I told you they wouldn't try to do it. And yet, they tried. And now, like all the rest of them, they disappeared, just like magic.
An important film.
I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm getting out of here.
The most horrifying sacrifices in unimaginable circumstances in the middle of the ocean. Death was at the end of this adventure.
Help me.
Ghost Galleon.
Help! Somebody help me, they've got me.
Ghost Galleon.
It's coming directly at us. The ship's going to hit
It's a movie. It was released in the U.S. as Horror of the Zombies, which is a little weird because they're definitely not zombies. I guess they move slow and stuff. So, but I actually own this one in a weird roundabout way. There's the Blind Dead a few years ago put out a box set,
Which I own, yes.
yes, in a little coffin thing.
Oh, love it.
When I helped Matt move a few years ago, he's like, "Well, I don't really want to keep this. You want it?" So, sure, I'll take it. It's like, all right. And I said, yet hadn't watched this one in this set. So I thought, well, I think I'm going to check that out. But it is available on Amazon Prime, so it's easy to pick up.
Law of diminishing returns on these Blind Dead movies.
Yes.
Oh, yes. I have a lot to say about these, but I would prefer to have Mr. Morgan.
We'll begin.
The floor.
The Rotten Tomatoes on this one, per nobody's surprise, had no critics ratings, and a little high actually, 36 from the audience, which I actually thought was about 10 points higher than I was expecting.
Oh, wow.
No idea what the box office was. No idea what the budget was. It just really that information.
Probably
is,
many thousands of dollars,
Yes.
maybe as much as 10.
maybe. Yeah. Directed and written by
Armando de Osorio.
Hey, all right. I like that. Armando de Osorio. Oh, that sounds cool. So he directed the Blind Dead movies, the 4 of them. They've all been under several different names over the years, but most often recognized as the Blind Dead, of course. He made, I didn't realize this, so after he'd retired, or maybe while he's still working on some films, he made a living painting creepy images of the Knights of the Templar.
Wow.
Are these available?
I'm not sure. I couldn't find...
Passed away several years ago.
Yeah,
so.
I just wonder if prints were made or something, because the look of the Blind Dead is really cool.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's probably the number one selling point of the films. He also wrote all of the movies as well. Let's see. Starring Maria Persci, who's from Austria, who has been in Hawaii Five-0.
And a shit ton of Paul Naschy movies.
Yes. Yeah. Euro Cops. Tons of Austrian and German productions. Jack Taylor, who is the priest in Conan.
Oh, and he was the really ugly professor that Vanessa riffed on in Pieces.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How
That
funny.
guy, Jack Taylor, has had the longest career.
Oh, man. He was born in Oregon, too. Oregon City, down here in Oregon by Washington. But then worked in Europe for most of his career.
He's like Eurotrash comfort food character actor.
That's a great way of putting it, yes. Barbara Ray, who really didn't have any, not that Barbara Ray. Manuel de Blas, who had 212 credits. 3 are in production right now.
Wow, good for him.
Most were a lot of European as well, but I loved a couple of titles. Watch Out, We're Mad. The Vampire Night Orgy.
Oh, yes.
And a dog called Vengeance.
Oh.
Vengeance! Vengeance!
Fucking dog. Let's see. So the idea of the Blind Dead is they're the living corpses of the Satan-worshipping versions of the Knights of Templar who hunt human victims, and in this particular film, out of a 16th century galleon. Well, let's see how to describe this film. Opens on a painfully 70s photo shoot where these 3 bikini models awkwardly and bizarrely trying to pose with the lady instructing them how to do it. And it's just like, wow, this is going to be an interesting film. The idea is they're now going to take these models and a couple other models, and they're going to go to a island and do an island shoot and maybe shoot on a boat and stuff. And they show up there, and the guy who's paying for all the things comes down this stairs, an introduction where he's like, "Hello, I'm a sporting goods magnate. How are you all today?" What the hell is this? All right, thanks for that introduction. Now I know who you are.
I'm Basil Exposition.
That's right. The guy kind of looks like, you know how Frank Stallone looks next to Sly Stallone,
Right.
or
Patrick Swayze's
yeah,
brother.
Swayze's brother. If you've seen the two of them, you know exactly what I mean. This guy looks like that version of Matthew McConaughey.
Oh.
And for some reason,
Is that Jack Taylor?
the
Dude with the
actor?
mustache?
I think so. Yeah, I believe
Tall,
he is.
slender?
Mhm. Yep.
Okay, yeah. Wow, I never thought of Jack Taylor as looking like an ugly Matthew McConaughey.
Maybe it's just this movie. We got extra lucky on this one.
Gotta love it.
For some reason, and I don't know, maybe I looked away from the screen for a brief moment and missed something. For some reason, two of the models are already out in a boat alone, just hanging out and get lost in a fog. What could be coming? And we mentioned earlier about the Blind Dead being character based. The character, look at the character is the most thing. That boat in this movie also has that. It is an awesome looking boat.
Oh, cool.
It is
Except
so
for
well
the long
done.
shots, the miniatures.
Oh, those are funny. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
good Lord.
Oh, and
Those are like Saturday Night Live level miniatures.
Oh, they're bad.
There's like it's like whenever you would see like a burning pirate ship on a Saturday Night Live skit, like in a bathtub. That's exactly what the miniature in the Ghost Galleon looks like.
Yes, this is very true.
But yeah, on the boat, on the actual boat,
Where
it's
they're-
like atmospheric and cool.
Oh, yeah. It was just. So they see the galleon and they're like, "Oh, it's God! It's going to hit us." 5 minutes later, it's still coming to hit us. Like, Jesus Christ! So when it finally runs into them, they like climb up on board, and it's an interesting scene because they're climbing up on board, which it kind of looks like they're probably out in the water someplace, not in a deep water, and then they climb up the ladder. Well, one of them climbs up the ladder, and oh, look, we're in a set. Very obviously in a set because it's gone from it's kind of bright outside to pitch darkness, man. You can see nothing off the boat. And then proceeds to do one of at least 3, if not 4, tours of this boat where somebody gets on board and has to look all around it. They're talking like minutes long looking around this boat. It does look cool. There's no doubt about that. But of course, they find these very large coffins. What could be in there? And they just keep wandering. Nobody pays any attention to that. And then there's more painful stuff where one of the models starts to complain and says, "I think I'm going to call the police." So the magnate and his enforcer buddy tie her up and throw her into a bedroom. Just leave her. It's like, wow, okay.
It was a different time.
That's right. Oh, man. It's, yeah, and it's a 70s style European movie. So, of course, there's a horribly uncomfortable attempted rape scene because that's just what the Europeans did a lot during that period. She does, get away. Again, where this movie gets cool starts to happen when the blind dead wake up and start to get out of their coffins. Now, this is cool in that it looks neat. It's not cool in that it's creepy or you're sitting there going, ooh,
Right.
suspenseful. Because it's really a long process to open those coffins and for them to get up out of the coffins and for them to walk anywhere. If you hate slow-moving zombies, this movie will piss you off to no end. Because this is a group of people running around from the blind dead on a boat. So, they got to go like 2 feet and they're in a wall.
Yep.
Leaning against the wall going, ah! The blind dead shot coming close back to the people. Ah! Blind dead shot. But it's like, Jesus, come on, man. There's been times where we've kind of said where we get under the wire a little bit on this for recording and you go, well, I picked this one. And I kind of got to stick with it. I might have, plus with this particular subject, I'm like, oh, God, man, this is good. It's not pure trash. It's an entertaining enough film to watch overall. But, wow. They also introduce a very strange character in the form of a weatherman who apparently knows everything about 16th century galleons and unnatural fog and kind of the Knights Templar and anything that happens in this movie. He is basically the scientist who's there to explain everything.
I like that they made him a weatherman, though, because that's accessible.
Yeah, there you go.
That's meteorologist. Get it right.
True, yes.
Sanitation expert.
But the moment there's a funny scene with him where he realizes that they found this fog bank in a place where fog never occurs. This is mysterious. Okay, whatever. But then we're going to go check out this galleon and do that stuff. You got to take me with you. I got to go with you. You got to bring me along, man. It's just like, okay, sir.
You'll need a guide.
That's right. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, I can tell you all
Ghost
about
Galleon
it.
Sherpa. I am your Ghost Galleon Sherpa.
This has a scene somewhat similar to the bad movie I picked last time, The Island of the Dead, where they find a bunch of treasure, and they're all kind of like, well, should we take the treasure? If we take the treasure, will it kill us, or will we be? It's just, I've seen this scene before. Never take the treasure from a place like this, people. Again, though, the treasure room actually has the stage production, the mise en scène of the scenes is really good in a lot of places in this film. The treasure room has some neat shit hanging on the walls, and it's like, man, I can't put that much effort into writing the script. You might have really had something here.
Exactly. It's too bad. Yeah, I'm actually a pretty big fan of the movies. Faults and all, considerable faults and all. And this is ridiculous as fucking hell. It's easily the most ridiculous of the four of them, which is saying a lot. But you're right. It's pretty damned entertaining. And there is something iconic. And for me, at least, I watch this movie by myself in the dark at home. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was telling you, I was getting caught up on the De Osorio movies, on the Blind Dead movies. I just was kind of cycling through them all because I hadn't seen them in a while. And that's definitely the silliest one. It's also the least rapey, which is nice because one of the things that is really skeevily uncomfortable about them is that there's always going to be an attempted rape or a rape scene in them. And it's very hard to reckon with. That said, it is the scare scenes are really, really atmospheric, and I find a lot of resonance in that because, of course, it's the whole it's the whole sort of symbolic representation of death. Right. It's pokey as hell, and it's just lumbering along, and you figure you'll probably be able to get away, but it always catches up with you. I'm a fan of those movies, and they all have it's like Eurotrash character actor comfort food for me. Speaking of another Pieces connection, the second Blind Dead movie, Return of the Evil Dead, it co-stars Frank Brana, who's the really grouchy, gray-haired guy with the walrus eyebrows in Pieces, who plays one of the police inspectors in Pieces, and he plays the mayor of the American city in Slugs. So more character actor comfort
Slugs. Well, so then tell me this: is there any kung fu professor in any of these Blind Dead movies?
God damn it, no.
All right, I'm out.
Owning 4 Bruno Mattei movies kind of takes me out of the running of criticizing anybody for liking any kind of film.
Only 4? Dude.
Just get started.
I am a hardcore Bruno Mattei fan.
He's awesome.
I am like my co-podcaster Cody and I are like brothers in Mattei worship.
Nice. He's excellent.
I love that man's work.
Now these 3 of them came into my possession like 2 weeks ago, so this is like brand new, just starter pack.
Oh, you lucky man! Right. One of my greatest theatrical experiences ever was in high school watching Night of the Zombies, aka Hell of the Living Dead, in a packed house on a Friday night.
Oh, wow.
With the audience going absolutely ape shit. Sorry, we're meandering. This is I have the City of Geek virus, which is that I draw this podcast into meandering on tangents. So,
so as long as the tangents are
hey, you know what?
Interesting.
It's 6 degrees of separation for everything. But yes, Blind Dead, Ameno de Osorio, zombie, not zombie pirates, but Walking Dead pirate thingies.
One of the things that's bizarre sometimes when you get these DVDs, like there's not a lot of extras, but one of the extras on it is a TV commercial, which I'm watching is going, you think back to when this was being advertised, there's like 4 channels in the world, and this would be advertised. It must be very weird to have seen that commercial just pop up wherever it did.
Oh, God, yes.
It's not a great commercial either. So it's kind of like, what the? And to see that and go, I'm going to the theater.
Well, it all depends on how you're wired.
Yeah.
Eric, because
oh, yeah.
It would have been catnip for me, man. Catnip.
I don't know if my 6 or 7-year-old would have gone. There is, the nice distinction that they hunt by sound, predating A Quiet Place by several decades.
Right.
And that actually is the source of some tension in the movie. Because when people figure that out, it's like, whoa.
Yeah. They don't figure that out in this one.
A couple of them actually do in the other 3.
I think it's mentioned, but nobody does anything about it.
Right.
So yes, that's my pick on this. And this, it's not quite, it's a tough one because it's kind of good, but it's not bad enough to be so bad it's good, but it's not good enough to go highly recommended.
Yeah.
If you're so inclined, you'll probably like it.
If you're into Eurotrash horror, it's worth a look.
Yes, well said.
Well, nice. Why don't we take a little moment here, and we're going to jump over to Vanessa. We'll do a little interview with her, and then we will be right back with Tony. Yeah. Hey, Vanessa. We miss you. What are you doing way over there?
Hi. I missed you guys too. I wish I'd never left. I'm actually out on vacation right now. I'm checking out the awesomeness that is Atlanta, and doing a couple of little filmy things while I'm here with the friends and all kinds of stuff like that. So I'm not physically in the same room as you.
Yeah, a little birdie told me that this vacation was kind of a working vacation.
Yeah, I actually have sat most of the vacation on the carpet editing for various games that have insane launch dates that are very soon. So
that's cool. That's cool. Well, luckily Tony K has been able to sit in for you today. And
what the hell, man? I'm so replaceable. It's unbelievable.
I mean, he's kind of an encyclopedia.
Yeah. If you were replaceable, though, why would we be talking to you now?
Oh, snap. Take that, Tony. The guy on the other part of the podcast that's going to be smooshed with me.
Well, we miss you terribly, and we know that this week was Pirates, and this was actually your pick. So I know that you're going to be giving us a review of your pick for this. Can you tell us what it was?
Yeah, so the pick that I chose, well, initially, I had done this entire thing because I wanted to do The Fog. And unfortunately, the minute we announced Pirates, Kelly, you were so kind as to inform me that The Fog was unacceptable because they're lepers. So I went back and I had to go to the drawing board, and I went with Waterworld.
Oh, cool.
That'll be interesting to hear.
Yeah, I cannot wait to hear your entire
There's just
review
so
on
much
this.
to say about Waterworld. That's the problem, is condensing it into a small enough segment that it's not just a show of its own. That's going to be the hard part.
I will add in that I have not seen Waterworld, but I did stay in Vegas at the Planet Hollywood Hotel in the Waterworld
Oh my God.
room.
That must be so magical. I will tell you that experience is probably 100 times better than the actual film.
Oh man!
They did have props.
Did it
from
really?
The movie in the room. It's very.
It's
weird.
not hard. I mean, they were supposed to spend 100 mil and they spent 175. They have over an hour of extra content they shot. You'll hear more about this later.
Wow. So I actually don't mind this movie at all, but my big memory of it when I lived in Los Angeles, Universal Studios would do the Waterworld experience, which was pretty fucking cool. Big stunt extravaganza or something like that.
Strunsopolis of stunt trending. Yeah.
Also what you missed by not being here is we started out with breakfast wine.
Oh, of course. Of course you did. I mean, you gotta you've got to have like drinking if you're going to have Mr. K in the room. So.
Well, hey, you're not allergic
I might
to
be,
wine, are you? You might be. Let's find out next time.
I've only ever been blackout drunk once in my life, and it was from 2.5 glasses of wine. Yep.
Wow.
Oh no,
was a
I can
lightweight.
have like
And I am.
6 to 8 glasses or, shots, I guess, of vodka before I have issues. So that's why we think I might have an issue with wine.
Well, I'm glad that I broke it out with Tony.
Yeah,
then
me
instead.
too. You know what? In theory, I am just so happy for you and your wine situation. It sounds so wonderful. I wish I could be a part of it.
Well, let's get into your review, and we'll talk to you right afterwards. Sound groovy?
That sounds awesome. Thanks, guys, for hooking up in there, and everybody else, enjoy the show. Hi, everybody. I'm so sorry that I can't be there with the guys, but I wanted to make sure that I actually got my review out to you because I actually bothered to sit through Waterworld.
The future. The polar ice caps have melted, and the Earth lies beneath a watery grave. Those who survived have adapted to a new world.
What did you see out there in your 15 lunars?
Such as?
An end? An end to all this water?
You're asking the wrong person.
And the human dream is the search for a mythical place called dry land.
It doesn't exist!
How can you be sure?
Because I sailed farther than most have dreamed. I've never seen it.
This place, this whole way of living, it's ending.
Dry land is not just our destination, but it is our destiny!
Universal Pictures presents a world unlike any you have ever seen. Kevin Costner, Dennis Hopper, Gene Triplehorn. Waterworld.
And I just can't contain the craziness that is this film. So a couple of things about it, straight up. It's from 1995. The cut that was theatrical is 2 hours and 15 minutes in length. The cost was actually $100 million originally. And then it was $175 million. But it made back $264 million. So I remember thinking when it came out that it was like a huge commercial loss, but actually it did make its money back, at least internationally. Overall consensus is that critics find it at about 45% on Rotten Tomatoes, audience 43%. There is an extended edition with an extra hour of footage. So if you ever feel like you haven't gotten enough Waterworld, you can watch much, much more. I don't know that it's actually worth it. I've heard like on the internet, a couple of people said that it was way better, but I can't do that to myself. So some things that are really interesting about it. It's directed by Kevin Reynolds. He has 12 directing credits. He actually went to law school and he gave it up to switch over to film. And he was part of the project mostly because he was already so connected to Kevin Costner. So he had directed Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, The Count of Monte Cristo. He was really, ended up being really good friends with Costner. So when Costner got the film, he came on board at the same time. The writer is Peter Rader, who's done 4 films, including Escape from Witch Mountain, and David Towney, who has done a ton of stuff, including Fugitive, Pitch Black, all of the Riddick movies. So this guy actually went on to have a decent career. Peter, not so much. Actually, the writer, David,
the writer of Critters 2, and that was his first ever feature film. It was actually originally written in 1986 as a Mad Max ripoff, like purposefully. They were like, yeah, let's do Mad Max, but in water. They specifically were kind of basing it off of Mad Max 2 Road Warrior. So the bigger the better, I guess. Although I really thought it should be more like based off of Thunderdome from the feeling of it. And I can't believe I just watched a film that's more camp than Thunderdome, but that's okay. They also mixed in a little bit of legends, like Helen of Troy, and then they threw in some Old Testament Bible in there too. But they actually rewrote it for many versions until 1992. So that's 6 years later, when Costner and Reynolds, after having done their fourth film together, joined and came on board. Now, the thing that's really important to remember about this, and perhaps the reason why Waterworld is sort of the disaster it is because there were 9 producers on it, one of which was Costner. So Costner had a lot of weight for this film, and one of the things that he did, he was kind of obsessed with himself at this point in his career. He thought he could do no wrong. He really had a huge ego. And so he kind of just started backseat directing. In fact, Kevin Reynolds left partway into this movie because he just couldn't handle Costner constantly stopping the scenes and saying, oh no, we should do it like this. So his name is still on the credits, but he didn't actually complete the film because he was so irritated. A couple of characters we have here. So we've got Kevin Costner as the Mariner. The Mariner is this kind of independent rogue warrior guy who doesn't obey the laws of man or man's laws, any of that kind of stuff. You've got Dennis Hopper, who's this, like, the typical bad guy. Again, very Mad Max, very obsessed with like oil and, houses, thousands and thousands of people who all obey him for some reason. And then you have Jean Triplethorn as Helen. You might remember her from Basic Instinct, The Firm, Mickey Blue Eyes. And I actually just watched her the other night in Sliding Doors, so that was a trip. And then a couple of other notable people in here. There's a young girl who's also one of the kind of 4 main characters, Tina Majorino, and the plot kind of circles around her. She plays Enola, and you might recognize her from Napoleon Dynamite, which was pretty crazy because I was like, man, this girl looks so familiar. And then realized actually she is the main girl in Napoleon Dynamite, and it's really weird when you start thinking about that. Even stranger, at one point, the Mariner is being encircled by an evil guy flying a plane, and it's circling around and around and around his boat, his catamaran, and he shoots at it with a giant kind of harpoon gun. Well, I shouldn't say he should. Somebody does. It goes straight through the pilot. That pilot is Jack Black, which is just the craziest thing. I didn't notice it at the time, but the person that I watched this particular film with noticed it straight away and was like, oh my God, did you see who that was? So the plot of Waterworld is it's a post-apocalyptic world where the polar ice caps have melted via geomagnetic reversal, I guess. So no climate change here necessarily, but the world is now covered in water. All that's left are people in these kind of floating villages, and then people who live on boats. And there's a lot of boat warfare. There's a huge kind of culture of robbery and, yes, piratery. So I chose this because there are a lot of characters in here that are part of something called, or they are called smokers. They all work for the deacon, and they are essentially just pirates. They're looting, they're raiding, they're pillaging, and they're only to cause total destruction. But the best thing about these particular pirates is most of them are riding around on like ski-doos. So they're not, I don't know, swashbuckling. I'm not sure what the right word is. Badass on your dirty, dirty ski-doo. But a lot of the time it just looks silly as hell, which I kind of loved. They are, as I said, they're all led by the Deacon, aka Dennis Hopper. They live on a giant oil rig, which you may or may not have caught. It's really obvious at the end, and I had never caught this until this time around. They live on a giant oil rig that is definitely totally not the Exxon Valdez. And whoever was like running the Exxon at that time, there's like one of those, you know, cheesy pictures of him in his suit with an American flag behind him, and they basically think that he's like their god or like in the king of yore. So they're always kind of referencing him and nodding at him, which I thought was a really cool detail. So you end up with a Deacon versus our hero, Kevin Costner, who is a mutant. He's become adapted to the sea. Apparently, there are multiple of these people, but he's the only one we ever see. Kevin Costner's character, who seems to be this loner, it opens on that shot that we all know of him just like peeing into a jar and then putting it through this process and then drinking it. And by the way, I do not understand this, because if he can process his own pee, which would be very salty and filled with minerals, and turn it into clean water, why doesn't he just do that with ocean water? Like, why use your pee? That doesn't make any sense. It's fine. It's fine. He's selling dirt to this this kind of big city. There's some weird things that happen, and somebody realizes he's a mutant, and they immediately sentence him to death. He gets into a cage, and they're gonna lower him into this giant like muck pool, which is never really explained. I don't know if it becomes their food source or what. You see like a dead body getting lowered into it as part of a funeral service earlier, so I'm not quite sure what it is about. And at that moment, as they're lowering him, the smokers attack. He's only manages to escape with his life because he's getting lowered into the actual muck, and he can't like get out of his cage, because a woman named Helen, definitely not based off Helen of Troy, shows up and says, I will help you escape if you take me and basically her surrogate daughter, help us escape on your boat. So he agrees. They get out. They are basically rescued for him by them rescuing him in exchange for this passage. And it turns out the little girl has this map, a tattoo map on her back that's supposed to bring them to dry land. So she is this sort of beacon of hope, and a lot of people are after her. In fact, the Deacon is after her because they all want to find dry land. Nobody wants to live endlessly on Waterworld anymore. They're like, well, do you know where dry land is? And he's like, yeah, of course I do, because he had that giant thing of dirt. And so after a couple of days, they realize he actually has no idea where it is. In fact, with his gills, he's able to swim all the way down to the bottom of the ocean to these old cities under the sea, grab dirt, bring it up, and then just dry it out and sell it. And that seems to be like his thing. I'm not really sure like where his abilities start and end. It's not super clear. As the story progresses, essentially, of course, something happens, the smokers catch up to them, the little girl is kidnapped, and then they have to go rescue him. And by that point, he kind of goes from this being this really isolated guy who doesn't want to help anyone or anything because everyone's just out to kill him, and, you know, it's just a really rough Wild West style world, to suddenly really loving this kid. And I think they do develop that story pretty well. So he decides to take it upon himself to basically take on an entire oil rig filled with pirates and save the girl himself. And there's a lot of great lines about how, you know, he'll come and kill you, and the little girl's like, you know, really hyping him up in front of the other pirates, trying to freak them out and talk about how like he's invincible and stuff like that. It's kind of interesting. The things I liked about this film, actually, let's start with the things I didn't like. They oversell the Mariner so hard. It's so clear that Kevin Costner felt like he had to come across as the coolest shit. Like he had to be the most interesting dude on screen at every moment. And he clearly had a big hand in rewriting it. In fact, one uncredited writer who did work on this movie was Joss Whedon, who said that it was one of the worst experiences he ever had. And when he showed up, all he did was essentially write down Kevin Costner's ideas and implement them without any alterations. So there's just a ton of the Mariner just being so cool and so serious, and he's just the best and the worst. And you can tell he's serious because he tries to like sell the women into like rape multiple times. Like he tries to sell their bodies in exchange for goods, which is really weird. I don't know how that makes you more of a man, but there you go. There's also like, he's so like, oh yeah, I'm a badass and I'm on the edge of everybody. Nobody gets me because I'm a mutant. But then he like is Flipper. Like he's literally Flipper at times. Like at one point, like he jumps out of the sea and like kind of, you know, does one of those crest dolphin jumps over everybody and, you know, comes back down. And in fact, you get this like real Free Willy moment where like the little girl's like riding him. It's just so insane. And he also has these like boots, and the boots are like really important. They're just like old gross ski boots, and the whole time you're like, man, we're in fucking like Waterworld. Everybody's got a tan. It's hot. Like you're outside all the time. Wearing these ski boots looks like pure hell, and it really makes him stand out. And of course it's to like hide webbed feet or whatever. But like, it's just really weird decisions as to what one guy thinks happens to be very cool. On the positive side, there's a lot to really like about this film. Dennis Hopper is the Deacon. He is just so much fun. He sells that role like nobody's business. There was a scene that I had kind of vaguely remembered. I haven't seen this since I was a kid, and we watched it like on demand on TV. There was the scene where he has like, he loses an eye in the initial battle with the Mariner, and they put in this fake eye, and it looks horrible. And he's like asking his pirate buddies, you know, hey, like, does this look good? And they're all like, oh yeah, it's really good. And then he turns to this like punk ass kid and he's like, what do you think? The guy's like, looks stupid as hell. And he's like, oh, I knew it. You guys are all lying to me. And there's this constant kind of like eye gag where he's trying to find something that's going to work for him. He just really commits. And because he's so over the top and goofy, he's such a perfect bad guy for this. Like, it just works so nicely. The Exxon Valdez Easter egg I thought was actually really kind of cool. The premise is neat. Like, I love post-apocalyptic films. You guys might remember the first show I did with these losers here. This Kelly and this Eric fellow was the post-apocalyptic one because I just love that kind of narrative. So the premise is really neat. Like, I think it's got a lot of cool stuff to it. Everyone's tanned beautifully, so that's great. The ski formations, like I said, are just a joy to watch. Like watching, like I don't know that I always care about giant battle scenes, especially with the Avengers. A lot of that stuff feels really like too much or hard to track, but these battle scenes are just really fun. It's like you're watching, you can see why the theme park is so popular at Universal Studios, because it's just like, yeah, you jump and you explode that thing. That's beautiful. Golf clap. And the future, just the weird future, like nonsense and tech is also kind of fun. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. In fact, most of it doesn't make any sense at all. Like I said, with him peeing into that water thing that like purifies it, and then he drinks it and gives it to his plant. Why? And then like he really covets paper for literally no reason, but he could get all the paper he wanted if he just like swims down to the bottom. And like, there's just a lot of things that don't fully track, but watching him take his catamaran, which he's totally kitted out, and switch it into all these different like battle positions. So he'll like knock a thing that hits another thing. It's very Mousetrap. And then like it pulls a thing, and then all of a sudden he's got like cannons that rise or stuff like that. That's actually super fun. And the absurdity of it is also really fun at different points. Like at the end, he does this giant bungee jump to save the girl. So there was just some really interesting, fun moments in this film. The thing that just kills it, honestly, is Kevin Costner. He just takes himself far too seriously, and he's clearly an egomaniac in this. I know that there's a lot of behind the scenes stories, and I definitely encourage you, if you get bored, to look it up, or I'm sure there's good documentaries about what it was like to make this. But for example, they film it off of Hawaii, and they've got this giant like sectioned off water pool. And so they built this enormous pool in the ocean to film scenes that are in the ocean, which I guess is a thing because they do it for Titanic a couple years later. And they like didn't build a bathroom. So like everybody's like doing these scenes, and then everyone has to pee in unison. Like they all have to get on this little shuttle ferry and be taken back in and pee, or they have to like go off the side. So it's apparently a super miserable experience. I guess both Triplethorn and Kevin Costner were severely injured on set at various points. That obviously the budget went way over what they expected, like 100 million to 175 million. That's a pretty big ballooning right there, and it was the record at the time. But you know, if you take away some of that Costner seriousness and you really focus your attention on Dennis Hopper, I would say actually this film has a lot going for it. And compared to some of the action movies that are coming out now, like there's some really lovely little neat moments. There's a guy who like lives in the bottom of the oil rig, and he's there to tell them how much oil they have, and he just sits in his boat in the pure dark and just waits for them to open up a hatch so he can say exactly how much oil there is. And at one point there's like a match that flickers down, and he sees that like he is in this sea of oil and a match is coming for him, and he just says, "Oh, thank God." So there's just little things like that is like, you know, I didn't hate it. I did hate Kevin Costner, and I do think he ruined the film by taking it far too seriously. Even with that, it's still kind of a joy. I would say the ending is a little silly. There's a lot of like, well, you can take the sea out of the boy, but you can't take the boy out of the sea or whatever. So there's a big like, well, I got you to dry land, but I can't stay here. It's not in my gills. And there's kind of that sort of cowboy old Western like romanticism of a man's relationship to his environment. That's kind of crazy. So anyways, that's enough of that. I will let you get back to the normal actual people in a room together review, not just me sitting here by myself staring at the carpet. Miss you guys. I can't wait to get back in just 2 weeks from now. So next week, I'll also be doing something very similar to this where I will be recording myself. Can't wait to get back, and have a great week. Bye.
And we are back with Tony. Man, Vanessa had a good pick, you guys, huh? That was nice.
Oh, hell yeah.
Hey, Tony, we were talking about the Bruno Mattei stuff. Have you seen Robo War?
Hells to the yes. I owns the Blu-ray, my friend.
I love it so much.
Oh my God. Well, and plus like Reb Brown. Jesus Christ. Reb Brown is like, there is a guy who's fucking character actor comfort food in, you know, in action trash cinema, man.
I need to own that Blu-ray too.
It's so, yeah, I own it, and I loaned it to Cody. That rat bastard has not returned it to me yet. I watched it once. He's probably watched it 9 times.
Lots of extras?
Yes, actually, not a lot, but a few. You know, there's a couple of interviews on there. It's a lot of fun.
The only one I have with extras is Killer Nun. Got the Blu-ray of that. Which
Killer Nun is not directed by Mattei. He directed The Other Hell, which is another nunsploitation movie.
Oh no, that's the one I have.
And
I've got both of those actually.
Okay.
I have both of those.
Okay. Killer Nun, Joe D'Alessandro, doesn't it? I think.
I believe so. That sounds
from
right.
the Andy Warhol movies. Yeah. The
Other
Other
that one I picked up at Cryptagon at what's his name? Vinegar Syndrome's booth.
Yeah. It also has a fine baby boiling scene.
Oh God.
The Other Hell does. It's got a great baby boiling scene.
Oh, you lost me, but you got me back.
Oh, that movie is just yeah. One of the things I love about Mattei's movies is he makes absolutely no bones about what a hack he is.
Oh,
He's and you guys know you were talking about Island of the Walking Dead or Island of the Living Dead. He also made another one around that time called Zombies: The Beginning. That somehow manages to cram. He manages to rip off his own movie Hell of the Living Dead, and he cobbles that together with Aliens. And there are naked naked alien children with bug eyes and fangs.
He must have loved Aliens because Shocking Dark is also an Aliens ripoff.
Yeah. AKA Alien 2.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Shameless.
Oh, God, yes. And actually, that co-stars Jaretta, I think, is in Shocking Dark.
I don't remember.
And she's quite the fixture in a lot of Italian trash cinema. So
I just love Shocking Dark and Robo War are my favorites because they're such blatant ripoffs of Hollywood films.
Yeah, completely. On like a dime. And actually, Zombies: The Beginning is the same way.
Okay.
Because they're right down to like, there's like a mother alien. It's called Zombies: The Beginning, but there's like this weird ass thing that is giving birth to the naked, alien children. And it sort of looks like it's got tentacles that are like those tubes on the back of your dryer.
Nice.
Pretty rad. It's
probably
very
what they
Bruno
are.
Mattei. It's got the master touch for sure. I love his movies. And Hell of the Living Dead is like the magnum opus of them all.
Really? Okay.
If you want to
Damn.
and I'm biased because I saw that in a theater, and again, it was a packed house. The audience was going absolutely bananas. I mean, this is the early 80s, and I'm living in the suburbs. There's not the internet. There's not, cable even is not as vast as it should be, or as it became. Right. And so what do you do when you're a bored kid in Spanaway, Washington? You went, you drove 10 minutes north to the Parkland Theater, and you sat down for a double feature, and you got every strata of human being that was bored on a Friday night, and it was just, this whole crowd was just like wild and roaring. There's this, it was just, it was just joy-inducing.
All right, Tony, we didn't ask for your life story.
Sorry.
Tony, it has been a blast having you here. Why don't we wrap this up? But the good news is you are going to be sitting in next week also because Vanessa is still out of town. Woohoo! So that means that whose choice is it? Oh, I think that we're going to make it your choice, Tony.
Yes.
So what have you got for a genre for us to discuss?
Topic. I choose blaxploitation.
Blaxploitation. Okay, are we going to try and keep it to genre, or can we wide it open so that, because there's not a lot of great genre blaxploitation.
I would be happy to broaden it out. In fact, that would be ideal because I think if you broaden it out, there's an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, I would agree with you there.
So yeah, I choose blaxploitation.
Fantastic. Eric is mopping up. If you wouldn't mind getting the vibrator. If you wouldn't mind getting the vacuum going.
Oh, my God.
And we will see you guys all next week. Thanks, everybody, for everything. We'll be back in a week. Bye.
There you go.
Our show is recorded somewhere high above Naval Station Everett at the nexus of all realities and is engineered and produced by Eric Morgret. Our theme music is Strange Aeons Part 1 by the band Nightshade and is used with permission. Find Strange Aeons Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and wherever fine podcasts are found.